$5,000 for a single bite of my leg. That's what he paid. Not a metaphor, not some twisted way of saying something else. An actual bite. Teeth marks that took 3 months to fully heal. And the thing is, that wasn't even the worst part of what happened to me in that house. Not by a long shot. My name is Chloe. I'm 26 years old now, and I'm going to tell you about the 14 months I spent as a piece of furniture in a rich man's living room. I know how that sounds. I know you're probably thinking this is some kind of exaggeration, some dramatic retelling of a bad relationship or a weird job situation. It's not. I was literally purchased to sit in a glass box and exist as decoration. I wasn't allowed to speak. I wasn't allowed to move. I was a human object, and by the end of it, I had started to believe that's all I ever was. I need to tell this story because I've been in therapy for 2 years trying to process it, and my therapist says that sharing it might help. She also says it might help other people recognize the signs before they end up where I was. So here it is. Everything from the beginning. I was 23 when this started. I had just dropped out of college because I couldn't afford it anymore. My mom had been sick, I had been working 2 jobs to help with her medical bills, and my grades had tanked. I was living in a studio apartment in the bad part of town, the kind of place where you hear gunshots at least twice a week and the locks on the doors don't really work. I was desperate. And when you're desperate, you make decisions that you would never make otherwise. I found the listing on a website I won't name. It was in a section for what they called alternative lifestyle arrangements. The ad was vague but intriguing. It said something like seeking young woman for long-term live-in position, all expenses paid, no sexual contact required, compensation negotiable. I remember thinking it sounded too good to be true, but also thinking that I had nothing to lose by at least asking. I emailed the address provided. The response came within an hour. It was from someone who identified himself only as Mr. Ashworth. He said he was looking for a companion of sorts, someone who could provide a particular kind of presence in his home. He said the position would require discretion and a willingness to follow unusual rules. He offered to meet me in a public place to discuss the details. I should have been more careful. I know that now. But at the time, all I could think about was the stack of bills on my kitchen counter, and the fact that my electricity was about to be shut off. So I agreed to meet him. The meeting was at a coffee shop downtown, one of those upscale places where a single latte costs more than I made in an hour at my waitressing job. Mr. Ashworth was already there when I arrived. He was older, maybe late 50s, with gray hair and an expensive suit. He looked completely ordinary, like someone's rich uncle or a businessman you might see in a bank commercial. That ordinariness made me trust him more than I should have. He explained what he wanted. He said he lived alone in a large house and that he had always found the presence of beautiful objects to be calming. He collected art, sculptures, rare antiques. But lately, he said, he had become interested in the idea of living art. A human being who could exist as a decorative element in his space. Someone who would be present without being intrusive. Silent. Still. Perfect. I remember laughing nervously when he said this. I asked him if he was joking. He wasn't smiling. He told me very calmly that he was completely serious, and that if I was interested, the compensation would be significant. He named a figure that made my head spin. More money per month than I had made in the entire previous year. Plus, free housing, free food, all medical care covered. The catch, he explained, was that while I was in his home, I would be expected to follow a strict set of rules. I would wear clothing that he selected. I would sit in a specific location that he had designed for this purpose. While I was in that location, I would not speak and I would not move unless absolutely necessary. I would be, for all intents and purposes, a living statue. I asked how many hours a day this would require. He said it would vary, but typically between 8 and 12 hours. The rest of the time, I would have my own room, my own space, freedom to do what I wanted within the house. I could read, watch television, exercise, whatever I liked. I just couldn't leave the property without his permission, and I couldn't communicate with anyone outside without his approval. That should have been the moment I walked away. The isolation, the control, all of it screamed danger. But he must have seen the hesitation on my face, because he immediately softened. He said I could have a trial period, just 1 week, to see if the arrangement worked for both of us. He said I could leave at any time if I was unhappy. He said he would pay me for the trial week regardless of whether I decided to stay. I said yes. I hate myself for saying yes, but I did. A week later, I moved into his house. The house was enormous. I don't know exactly how big, but it had to be at least 15,000 square feet. It was in a gated community about an hour outside the city, the kind of place where every lawn is perfectly manicured, and you never see the neighbors because the properties are so far apart. Mr. Ashworth, I learned, had made his money in something to do with technology investments. He had retired early and now devoted his time to his collections. The collections were everywhere. Every room was filled with objects, paintings, sculptures, glass cases displaying jewelry and artifacts. Some of it was beautiful. Some of it was disturbing. I remember walking past a display of antique medical instruments and feeling my stomach turn. But I told myself it was just rich people eccentricity. Nothing to worry about. My room was nice enough. It was in a separate wing of the house, with its own bathroom and a small sitting area. The bed was comfortable. There was a television and a small library of books. It felt almost like a hotel suite, if you ignored the fact that the windows had no way to open and there was a camera in the corner of the ceiling. He showed me the glass box that first day. It was in the main living room, which was a vast space with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows looking out on the grounds. The box itself was about 6 feet tall, 4 feet wide, and 4 feet deep. It was made of thick, clear glass, almost like an aquarium, but sized for a human. Inside, there was a simple wooden bench with a cushion on it. That was all. Just the bench. He explained that this was where I would sit during my working hours. The glass was one way, he said, so while people in the room could see me clearly, from inside the box, everything outside would appear slightly distorted and dim. This was intentional. He wanted me to feel enclosed, separate from the world around me, like an object in a display case. I remember standing there looking at it and feeling this strange mix of fear and curiosity. It was so bizarre, so completely outside anything I had ever experienced, that it almost didn't feel real. Like I was in a dream and would wake up any minute. The first day was surreal. He had me change into a white dress that he had selected, something simple and elegant that looked like it cost more than my car. He did my hair himself, pulling it back into a severe bun. Then he led me to the box, opened a door in the back that I hadn't noticed before, and gestured for me to enter. I sat down on the bench. He closed the door behind me. And then he just walked away, sat down in a chair across the room, and began reading a book. That first session lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of sitting completely still, not speaking, barely even blinking. At first, it wasn't so bad. I was nervous, which kept me alert. I spent the time looking around the room as much as I could through the distorted glass, trying to make out the details of the paintings on the walls, counting the books on the shelves. But after about 2 hours, the discomfort started to set in. My back hurt from sitting so straight. My legs were cramping. I desperately wanted to scratch an itch on my nose. But I didn't move. I don't know why. He hadn't threatened me. He hadn't even raised his voice. But something about the way he had explained the rules, the calm certainty in his voice, made me terrified of breaking them. So I sat there, frozen, while my body screamed at me to move. When the 4 hours were up, he came to the box and opened the door. He helped me out, which I needed because my legs had fallen asleep. He told me I had done well. Then he led me to my room and said dinner would be brought to me shortly. I didn't see him again until the next morning. That became the routine. Every day, I would wake up, shower, put on whatever clothing had been left for me, and report to the living room. Mr. Ashworth would be there waiting. He would inspect my appearance, sometimes adjusting my hair or my posture, and then I would enter the box. The sessions got longer as time went on. 5 hours, 6, 8. Eventually, I was spending 12 hours a day in that glass cage, sitting motionless while life went on around me. The worst part, in those early weeks, was the silence. I have always been someone who talks a lot. I process my thoughts out loud. Being forbidden to speak felt like being forbidden to think. I would have entire conversations in my head, arguments with myself, debates about whether I should stay or go. But I never said any of it out loud. The words just piled up inside me, unspoken, until I started to forget what my own voice sounded like. After about a month, something started to change. The discomfort of sitting still began to fade. My body adapted. I could sit for hours without fidgeting, without feeling the urge to move. And with that physical adaptation came a mental one. I stopped trying to entertain myself with thoughts and observations. I just existed. My mind went quiet in a way it never had before. Not peaceful exactly, more like empty, like someone had turned off a switch inside me. Mr. Ashworth noticed the change. He told me I was becoming what he had hoped for, a perfect object. He said it like it was a compliment. And the scary thing is, part of me took it as one. He started having guests over around the 3rd month. That was when things got more complicated. The guests were other wealthy collectors, men and women who shared his interest in unusual acquisitions. They would come for dinner parties, and I would be on display in my box, part of the evening's entertainment. Some of them ignored me completely, treating me exactly like the furniture I was supposed to be. Others were fascinated. They would stand in front of the box and stare at me, studying me like I was a painting or a sculpture. They would make comments to Mr. Ashworth about my features, my posture, the way the light hit my skin. They talked about me like I wasn't a person, like I couldn't hear them. And after a while, I started to feel like they were right. One of the guests was different. His name was Marcus, and he was younger than the others, maybe mid-30s. He had this intensity about him that made me uncomfortable from the moment I first saw him. He didn't just look at me. He studied me, like he was trying to figure something out. The first time he visited, he spent most of the evening standing near my box. He didn't say much to me directly, not that I could have responded. But I could feel his attention on me even when I wasn't looking at him. It was unsettling in a way that the other guests' attention wasn't. He came back several more times over the following months. Each time, he seemed more interested in me. He would ask Mr. Ashworth questions about me, about the arrangement, about how I had come to be there. Mr. Ashworth seemed pleased by the interest. He treated me like a prized possession that he was showing off. Then came the night that changed everything. It was maybe 8 months into my time there. Mr. Ashworth was hosting a larger gathering than usual, maybe 15 or 20 people. I had been in the box for about 6 hours when I noticed Marcus approaching. He had a glass of wine in his hand and a strange smile on his face. He stood in front of the box for a long time, just looking at me. Then he turned to Mr. Ashworth, who was nearby, and said something I couldn't hear through the glass. Mr. Ashworth's expression changed. He looked surprised, then thoughtful, then something like excited. They talked for several minutes while I watched, unable to hear, unable to move, unable to do anything but sit there and wonder what was happening. Finally, Mr. Ashworth came to the box and opened the door. This was highly unusual. I was never let out during a gathering. He helped me stand and led me out into the room. Everyone was watching. I felt exposed in a way I hadn't felt since the early days. Mr. Ashworth positioned me in the center of the room and told me to stand still. Then he announced to the gathered guests that there would be a special addition to the evening's entertainment. Marcus, he said, had made an unusual request and had offered an unusual sum of money to fulfill it. I still didn't understand what was happening until Marcus walked up to me with a small knife in his hand. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I had spent 8 months training myself not to move, not to speak, not to react. My body wouldn't obey me. I just stood there frozen as Marcus knelt down in front of me and cut a small piece of fabric from the bottom of my dress, exposing my calf. Then he leaned forward and bit me. It wasn't a gentle bite. His teeth sank into the muscle of my calf hard enough to break the skin. I felt the pain explode through my leg, white hot and sharp. But still, I didn't move. Still, I didn't scream. I just stood there, shaking, while blood ran down my leg and soaked into the carpet. The whole thing lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then Marcus stood up, wiped his mouth with a handkerchief, and smiled at me. He thanked Mr. Ashworth for the experience and said it had been worth every penny of the $5,000 he had paid. $5,000. That's what my flesh was worth. That's what this man had paid for the privilege of hurting me, of tasting my blood, of violating my body in the most literal way possible. And everyone in the room had watched it happen. Some of them were applauding. I was taken back to my room after that. One of the household staff cleaned and bandaged my wound. Mr. Ashworth came to see me later that evening. He told me I had performed beautifully. He told me he was proud of me for not breaking character. He told me that Marcus had been so pleased that he would probably want to visit again soon. I should have left that night. I should have packed whatever I could carry and walked out the door and never looked back. But I didn't. I stayed. I stayed because I had nowhere to go. I stayed because I had been there so long that I had forgotten how to be a person in the outside world. I stayed because some sick, broken part of me had started to believe that this was all I was good for. The months that followed were worse. Word had gotten around about what Marcus had done, about how I had stood there and taken it without flinching. Mr. Ashworth started receiving requests from other collectors. They wanted their own experiences with me. Some wanted to touch me. Some wanted to cut small pieces of my hair or take photos in poses that made me uncomfortable. Some wanted things I can't bring myself to describe even now. Mr. Ashworth said yes to most of them. The money was too good to refuse, he said, and I was performing my function beautifully. I stopped thinking of myself as a person somewhere around month 10. I was an object. Objects don't have feelings. Objects don't have rights. Objects exist for the pleasure and use of their owners. I repeated these things to myself like mantras, because believing them was easier than fighting them. The breaking point came at 14 months. There was another gathering, another group of wealthy collectors examining their host's possessions. I was in my box, as always. But this time, something was different. One of the guests, a woman I had never seen before, approached the glass and looked at me. Really looked at me, not like I was an object, like I was a person. She mouthed something through the glass. I couldn't hear it, but I could read her lips. She said, "Are you okay?" 3 words. Such simple words. But they shattered something inside me. For 14 months, no one had asked if I was okay. Not Mr. Ashworth, not the staff, not any of the guests who had paid to touch me or hurt me or use me for their entertainment. This woman, this stranger, was the first person in over a year to treat me like a human being. I started crying. I couldn't help it. The tears just came, streaming down my face while I sat there in my glass cage. The woman's expression changed from concern to alarm. She turned and said something to someone behind her, and then there was commotion, and then Mr. Ashworth was there, blocking my view, his face red with anger. He ended the gathering early. After everyone left, he came to the box and screamed at me for the first time. He said I had embarrassed him. He said I had ruined months of careful cultivation. He said I had shown weakness in front of people who paid good money to see perfection. He said a lot of things that I don't want to repeat. Then he told me I had 1 week to correct my behavior. If I couldn't perform my function properly, he would have to find someone else who could. That night, I snuck out of my room for the first time since I had arrived. I found a phone in one of the staff offices. I called my mom, who I hadn't spoken to in over a year. She answered on the 3rd ring, and when she heard my voice, she started sobbing. She had thought I was dead. Mr. Ashworth had told her I had decided to cut contact, that I needed space, that she should respect my wishes. He had been sending her money every month, she said. Money that supposedly came from me. She had believed it at first, but as the months went on with no calls, no letters, nothing, she had started to fear the worst. I told her where I was. I told her what had been happening. I told her I needed help. The police came the next day. They had a warrant, though I still don't know exactly how my mom got them to take her seriously. They found me in my room, sitting on the bed, waiting. I hadn't tried to run or hide. Part of me still thought I would be in trouble, that I had done something wrong by leaving the box, by crying, by asking for help. Mr. Ashworth was arrested. The investigation that followed uncovered a lot of things that I hadn't known about. I wasn't the first woman he had kept in that glass box. There had been others before me, at least 3 that they could confirm. One of them had disappeared completely. They still don't know what happened to her. He's in prison now. He got 18 years. Some people think that's too light, considering everything he did. I don't know what I think. I'm just glad he can't do it to anyone else. The recovery has been long and hard. 2 years of therapy, and I still have nightmares about that box. I still have moments where I catch myself freezing up, unable to speak or move, waiting for someone to give me permission. I still have scars, both physical and psychological, that I'm not sure will ever fully heal. But I'm getting better, slowly, day by day. I'm telling this story because I want people to understand how something like this can happen. I wasn't kidnapped off the street, I wasn't drugged or physically forced. I walked into that house with my eyes open, thinking I understood what I was agreeing to. The manipulation was so gradual, so careful, that I didn't realize what was happening until it was almost too late. If you're in a situation that feels wrong, if someone is slowly taking away your autonomy, your voice, your sense of self, please listen to that feeling. It's not normal to feel like an object. It's not normal to be treated like decoration. It's not normal to be sold piece by piece to the highest bidder. You are a person. You have value. You deserve to be treated like a human being. I lost 14 months of my life in that glass box. I lost parts of myself that I'm still trying to find. But I got out. And if you're in a situation like mine, you can get out too. That woman at the gathering, the one who asked if I was okay, I never found out her name. But she saved my life. Sometimes it only takes one person seeing you, really seeing you, to remind you that you exist, that you matter, that you're not just an object in someone else's collection. Mr. Ashworth paid $5,000 for a single bite of my leg. But what he really wanted, what all of them wanted, was to own a piece of my humanity, to take something from me that they could never give back. They took a lot, but they didn't take everything. I'm still here, I'm still me, and that's something they can never buy.